So, Jen, one topic I wanted to talk about, something that I hear from folks pretty frequently, is this question of should I do a postdoc? There are certain beliefs about almost gates that you need to open in order to reach next levels, or folks questioning about types of training and types of things they need on their resume in order to move forward. So I think it could be helpful for us to talk through what we've seen in terms of folks' perceptions about career perception and progression and actual career progression to help demystify that for folks. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent topic. And I will say, like, for me, coming from a humanities background, the idea, and I learned this, right, when working with people in different, like in STEM fields, for example, there is this real sense in academia that the postdoc is the thing that you're supposed to do, that you're meant to do, that you almost must do after you finish your PhD. Like, it is the obvious next step. You got to do a postdoc. Maybe you got to do a second, but you for sure have to do the first postdoc. And so for me, it was like, okay. But yeah, let's talk about right. Okay. So first of all, is that also common, do you think, in social science backgrounds? The sense that you should do postdoc?
I think it's more of a have to, right? I think there's an impression that faculty members who were hired in the 70s could get hired directly. Nowadays, folks can move straight from PhD to faculty, but it's much less common. I think I was looking at some of the data for folks in biological sciences, and now it's common to do two, if not three, postdocs. And so this notion that do you need more skills and training? Maybe you need some new experiences and things like that. But often it is just sort of a waiting ground to see if from postdoc you can then open up the opportunities, the grants, the connections, the publications that you need to get a faculty position. But I think it's not super well understood why one would do a postdoc, and treating it just as the natural path doesn't give you that chance to actually stop and say, why would I do this?
Yeah. So in what you're saying is this assumption that I think bears out with, a lot of the evidence, that it does help you in many fields, not all of them, but it will help you to do a postdoc if you want to then continue on the faculty track. There is no guarantee that doing a postdoc will actually help you personally, but almost the sense of not doing one is making the decision at that stage to not go into academia. But let's talk about the folks who don't really want to go the faculty route, but are still making this assumption, because I think many of them are, that they must also do a postdoc in order to get a good job in industry, quote unquote.
Well, and there I would say there's a fallacy in believing that the postdoctoral training is actually going to be valued in industry. And unless you can understand that from folks you're talking to, say you're a bench scientist and you go talk to bench scientists at a company who say, actually, you need 3 more years of experience with this specific lab technique, okay, go get the experience. But if it's just the notion that having more work experience will open more doors, you actually have a ton of work experience just from doing a PhD. You've led projects, you've gotten those done. You've probably done some research. If you're in the social scientist, you have a lot of research methods. And so the ability you have to move into a job right after your PhD is already there, and the postdoc isn't necessary. And so I would say if you're looking at industry, talking to folks on the other side in positions you're interested in and saying, hey, did you do a postdoc? What would it have been helpful for? But almost not even giving them that opportunity, just saying, what do you do in your current job? How did you get there? Allows you to determine whether the skills you'll get in a postdoc are actually adding value or not.
Yeah. And of course, let's talk about all postdocs are not created equal. Right? And so this is, sorry, folks, there's more work for you to do here to manage your career. That if whatever you're choosing to do after your PhD, whether it is a job in industry, quote unquote, whatever that means, or working as a postdoc somewhere, you can't assume that it is going to give you what you want out of the experience. So a big part of this is then first determining what actually you want out of your next experience. And the answer to that question is highly related to what you want broader in your career. So you got to decide. There's no like, should I do a postdoc or not is the wrong question. At least this at the wrong time. It might be an interesting question once you've made these decisions. Help me out here. I'm flailing.
Yeah. Well, and you're almost saying, will doing a postdoc help me achieve my goals? That requires some reflection on goals. And, I was thinking as you were mentioning that, Jen, that a lot of folks don't want to take that ownership of their career. It's almost easier to just walk the default path, walk the path everyone else is taking. It's almost outsourcing the choices, saying, I don't believe in myself to make these, or I'm too nervous what will happen if I make them wrong. So I'll just do this thing that everyone else is doing. And while that may work, it's entirely possible that you just happen to be on a path that will work for you. If you actually take the ownership, you have so much more opportunity to work in good environments that meet your values and standards, that allow you to do things that you're interested in, passionate about, strong at, and that pay the bills. And so this notion of actually taking that choice into your hands and saying, okay, what are my goals? Well, putting an asterisk next to them that your goals might change, they might get updated with new data, but that operating with your own goals allows you to be much more intentional in your career than if you're using the default paths or goals that others have established.
It's so important. Okay, I have a rant. You see this all the time, like on Twitter, for example. Folks will say, should I do a postdoc? Or there'll be a poll or one of these like big kind of academic Twitter kind of anonymous accounts, like, should we do a postdoc? Should you do a postdoc? And a lot of the responses will be people reflecting on their own personal experience, or like, I love my postdoc. My postdoc was amazing. My mentors were fantastic. I learned so many skills. And of course, folks saying the opposite and like, different things. That cool. That is not good information for you personally. If you are wondering if you should do a postdoc, all of that is noise. And like, I'm happy for folks that had a good experience, but that has nothing to do with what you need to decide for yourself. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Almost like walking into a restaurant and being like, what should I order on the menu? And someone says like, oh, the spaghetti is delicious, but like, okay, I'm gluten intolerant, right? And like, I don't want the spaghetti, right? And so like knowing yourself, knowing your preferences will help you pick among the menu. And then it's fair to say, okay, has anyone else eaten this? Like, let me check whether this is going to poison me. But the first step has got to be your preferences and your wants. And too often folks with careers just completely don't even do that check. They're just like, oh, well, he said the spaghetti is good. I'll go get that. Oh my gosh, I'm gluten intolerant. This is really terrible. Sorry, spaghetti has gluten, right? I think it does. Yes, no, spaghetti has gluten, right? And so it's basically this like, I'm having this really bad reaction to this, but this person said it was good. What's happening here? And so knowing ourselves, knowing our wants and our preferences, and then matching them with possible opportunities or next steps. If we forget to do that self-reflection, we can end up in a pretty uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, because not only does spaghetti have gluten, but if you have heartburn trouble, like someone in my family, the tomatoes are going to throw you for a loop too. It's all very bad.
And so just because someone else says it's good for them doesn't mean it's good for you, right? And there are certain things that are like preferred or default, etc. But the same way that in a menu, you're going to have your favorites that might not be the same as your friends' favorites. That's a wonderful thing, right? Like, eat what works for you. And so that amount that we think, okay, well, they say it's good, like, great. Oh, but I seem to have this heartburn. What's happening, right? And so if folks aren't attending to that, they can put themselves in situations that don't actually serve them and not even realize that.
So let's talk about, so in a previous video, Tory, you talked about data collection, I think you put it. Let's talk about how folks can gather the data they need about whether a particular postdoc would make sense for them. So let's say they have a specific one in mind, or like maybe a couple of different PI labs. Maybe there's like a lab that they want to work for. Like, how can those folks then say, okay, I've made some decisions about what I want. How can I determine whether, A, B, and C options would align? What do you say to that?
Well, and this is where my scientist side comes in with the data gathering, but I would say folks gather internal and external data. The internal data, what do I want? What are my goals? What am I hoping for? What would I want to see from this postdoc, right? Those sort of internal checks. And then the external data gathering, which is, Do I think this postdoc is going to provide me those opportunities? Where do folks go from this postdoc? Are those the sort of paths that I want? Does it feel like this will be a respectful and productive work environment where I'm going to learn? So actually doing those internal checks first, right? So that they can inform the external vetting by having that conversation with yourself and then checking the environment before you choose to accept something. And again, I've definitely stepped into things in the past where I get there and I'm like, oops, this is not what I expected. Like, right. And so you can stop to do that check and still end up in something that doesn't work. But even just stopping to do that check allows you to practice with choosing things intentionally and saying, here's what I think I'm going to get from this. Here's what I want, and choosing to move forward. So with a postdoc, really saying like, what do I want from it? Do I think this environment is going to provide that? Leaving room to be wrong, but not just flipping a coin, right? At least trying to get some information on the click there.
And the opportunity in an academic environment with most postdoc options is for you to have a frank conversation with the PI before accepting an offer, often before even applying. Because sometimes these things are so informalized, the hiring process for postdocs, that it actually is a great opportunity compared to kind of more formal hiring processes where you don't usually have a chance to talk to the person who would be your boss before you apply. Here, you actually probably have the chance to talk to the person who would be your boss before you even apply. So I would say, like, take advantage of this for sure. And you got nothing to lose if you don't get right. So, like, I'm not saying be rude, but ask the questions that is going to get you the information that is going to help you decide.
Oh, yeah. +1. Well, because I think anywhere where you have an employer, be that a supervisor, be that a manager, your relationship with that manager or supervisor is going to be the foundation for everything else that gets done. They might have an amazing lab, but if all of their trainees say this person is terrible to work with, it doesn't really matter that how many credentials that lab has. You may also have a terrible experience. And so basically then saying to yourself, okay, will I work well with this person as a supervisor? Almost that facilitating whatever other goals you have, whether it's to get more skills training, to get a grant, to get new network connections, whatever it is. If that relationship is not good, all of those other doors are going to be closed. So whether you're looking for a job as a postdoc or for any other employer, I always recommend that folks vet their manager or supervisor and check whether they think there's going to be a fit, because that person is going to have a big impact on your work life. And so it's fair to look for opportunities where there's going to be a click, because then other things might still go wrong, right? Like you might not get the funding or whatever, but at least having that strong relationship at the core allows other possibilities to emerge from the postdoc or from any employment relationship.
And speaking of any employment relationship, that would be a piece of advice that I would give people. It's not about whether you should do a postdoc or not. It's about what is the right next step for you in your career. And so if a postdoc is on that list, cool, but it's not that you should only have postdocs on that list. You should have positions on the list, workplaces, potential bosses, whatever it is. So even if you are thinking that it's probably going to be a postdoc, given your goals, I really would encourage you, I would challenge you, right? Jen has given you a challenge to see what other types of employment opportunities might align, I should say, with your goals, because you might be pleasantly surprised that you could get more of what you want sooner, better, in a more regular employment environment.
Well, and this underscores something we were talking about before we started recording, Jen, which is this notion of folks believing that they have to reach a certain level to have permission to do other things. And so sometimes doing a postdoc is reflective of folks feeling like they are not yet confident in their own competence. And so the notion that like, no, once I do that training, then I'll be enough. Then I'll believe in myself. Then I'll have enough skills. And it's something that I see in academics. I also see it in corporate folks. There are corporate folks who believe they have to climb to a certain level of the ladder before they give themselves permission to leave, before they give themselves permission to go start their own business or move to another job. And so this belief of, I'm not enough, but if I get that one more training, then I will be, Unfortunately, your belief there, your critic, is going to criticize you even after you have the experience. You'll be like, well, now I have the postdoc, but I didn't get that second postdoc, or I didn't get the big grant. And so really checking yourself to say, is an inner judge or critic or fear making this choice and believing that this external validation is going to mean that I'm finally enough? Or could I realize that I have enough now? I don't have everything, but I have enough now to go do the thing that I want to do. I have that permission already and don't need some other piece of paper to grant it.
I love this. So here's the advice I'm getting. Help me fill this out. Step one, recognize that you have enough right now with your PhD and you don't need a postdoc. Okay. Recognize you have enough. Step two, that internal and external data collection, right? That self-reflection and the learning about possibilities. Step three, what's step three, Story? Putting you on the spot.
Making informed choices based on that reflection, right? So you've given yourself permission to look, said, I am enough, I can look. I'm going to gather some data and I'm going to make a choice based on what I'm seeing instead of gathering that data and then burying your head in the sand.
Yeah, awesome.
So give yourself permission to explore, make choices informed by that exploration.
Is that it? Or is there step four?
What do you think? No, well, and then evaluate how your decisions worked so that you can make them better the next time. Because one of the chief things I see, and I've placed folks direct from PhD in careers, right, in industry jobs. So that is very much possible. But sometimes those folks circle back to me 2 years later because their first choice, they either didn't know everything about themselves or they didn't accurately gauge the environment. And so that sort of fit between what works for me and what type of workplace is this is imprecise when you haven't made very many choices. The good news is that once you've done it once, you can come back and do it again. And so maybe in 2 years, you say, actually, you know what? I think I want to be a little bit of a bigger fish in a smaller pond. I want to move to a smaller organization. Great. You can continue to adjust. So I would say, give yourself permission to explore, make choices, and then keep making choices based on what works for you.
Love it. Love it. And of course, you can always do that postdoc 2 years later if you really feel like you missed out.
If you're like, oh, okay, I really wish I would go back there. That door doesn't close.
Awesome. I think that's the end of this video.
I think
Cool.
so too.
Thanks. Thanks, folks.